Okay, in this video segment we are going to try to use fzero to find the steep angle to hit the target using our distance discrete function that we looked at in the previous video. Alright, so the comment here says that we're going to use fzero with an interval to get the steep angle. So let's go ahead and run this section so we can look at that plot again. So steep angle means somewhere over here between 45 and 90, and again we said that looked like 70 something. Alright, we're going to use an interval, so it seems to me that an interval of 45 to 90 would probably be a good choice in this case. So let's go ahead and create a variable called steep angle. So again, this is presumably going to be the steep angle that will hit that target at 0.8 meters. So we will call fzero, and we need to pass it a function handle. So we can just create a function handle right here to our distance discrete function. Okay, and then we're going to give it a vector with limits between which it should search. Alright, so like I said, let's go ahead and try 45 as the minimum angle and 90 as the maximum angle. Okay, so that gets passed in as a vector. And let's run this and see what happens. Oh dear, we got the angry red and a ding, so that's not so great. So let's see, it says error using fzero, not enough input arguments. Alright, that's interesting. So let's look again at our distance discrete function. It's more complicated than the function we used previously because it has multiple inputs. All right. So somehow when we call fzero, we need to tell it about those additional inputs. So it's playing around with theta, right, the first input, but somehow it needs to know what these other inputs are. Okay, now let's just take a second and search for some information about fzero. Okay, so I'm going to type help fzero, and what we want to look at is right here. So this is an input overloading of the fzero function. We pass in the function handle, we pass in the guess, or in our case the limits, and then the third input can be some options that replaces the default optimization parameters with some values that we specify in a structure called options. Alright? So we clearly are not that advanced, and we do not want to tell MATLAB to replace its default optimization parameters, okay? But that's what it expects in the third spot if we pass a third input, okay? So this is what we're going to do. We are going to come back here. So we've got our first input, the function handle, the second input, the limits, between which we want it to search for the zero of the function. And now this is where we would specify some special options, but we don't want to do that. So we're going to give MATLAB some empty square brackets to say, forget it, we don't want to do anything here, but we know that you're looking for some options in this third spot. And then we can go ahead and pass in the remaining inputs to the distance discrete function. Okay, so let's come back up here and look at it. The first input is theta. MATLAB's already doing something with that. We just need to now pass in the remaining inputs. Okay, so in this case, D, V0, and X target. Alright, so again, let's look at that to make sure we all understand. So we're calling fzero. The first input is the function handle. The second input is the interval. The third input is empty square brackets to tell MATLAB, go ahead and use your default options. We don't know any better than you. And then the remaining inputs inputs to our function. So in this case, d, v naught, and x target. Okay, so now let's run this section. Now it's not angry with us, and it tells us that the steep angle to hit the target is 70.1 degrees. Okay, perfect. Now, as we saw before, we can use the interval overloading, or we can make a guess. All right, so let's comment this line of code out and just convince ourselves that we could also call fzero with a guess and get the same answer. So steep angle is equal to fzero. Okay, here's my function handle as the first input. Now I'm going to make a guess. So we already know it's 70.1. Let's guess 60. All right, and then we do the empty square brackets to say, go ahead, use your default parameters, and then give it d, v naught, and x target, so it doesn't yell at us for not having enough input arguments to distance to scrap. Okay, and when we run this, great, again, we get the steep angle is 70.1.